You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast. This is the podcast that lets you know all of the latest happening in the world of Lucha Libre. Each week our team discusses news and events from this past week as well as preview the week ahead, covering Mexico-based promotions and top independents along with luchador-related news from throughout the United States. The Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network on luchacentral.com. This podcast and others from the network are also available on all major podcast streaming platforms like iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbay, Speaker, and Google Play. My name is Miranda Morales, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast, and it is my honor and pleasure to bring in the rest of the team. Introducing first, he is the dashing one, Mr. Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how's it going today?
Oh, it's going fantastic. How's it going for you, Miranda?
It is going well. We were bantering prior to recording on the heat. It is record-breaking heat all over the place, but especially out here on the West Coast. Humidity is what Dusty has, and that's a game I'm not playing. So I'll take my blow dryer / oven to the face over his level of humidity. But, you know, we can't do the rest of this show without the third member of this trio, and that's who?
Who?
It's the one and only Brendan Barr.
That's who.
What is this? Out of humidity? The ocean when it gets hot? What do you think happens to all that water when it gets hot?
I don't even know the science of humidity. The last thing I ever remember, I remember probably learning this from the Magic School Bus. Like, not even real education. It was the Magic School Bus that taught me about the water cycle. And even though humidity wasn't part of it, I feel like it's a part of it.
And in fairness, it is probably a lot more unbearably humid where Dusty's at. But yes. I'm certainly not. And for us, for us up here where we're not used to these high temperatures most of the year anyway, it's always, it hits 75, and some people are like, it's too hot, I'm going inside. So, that's where we're at.
Well, we have a pretty stacked show for you this week. I know I always say that, but it's always true. So that's why I just warn you. It's a stacked show. We are going through all the promotions this week with news from shows this past weekend. Of course, AEW looks like they're coming back to somewhat of a regular schedule. And, of course, our usuals this week in Lucha Libre history, and of course the way that we always start our shows, and that is the road back to shows with Brendan.
Kind of. Most of the big news is going to be happening later in those, so I have a couple quick notes for the road back to shows. We're going to start with what I hope becomes a recurring trend here. Mexico City is still green. I hope I get to say that as long as I said Mexico City is still yellow. I mean, at the least. This means that those should be, by the end of the month, allowed of the arena that they're in. Some really nerdy people are speculating on how many people that will mean for Arena Mexico, but honestly, it means way more than the 1,500 we're allowed right now. I imagine that Dusty will have more speculation on what that'll mean for upcoming AAA events as well, but that's the good news there. It was City is Green, and we're on it shows, which is fantastic. And then for the less good news, those of you who've been paying attention will know we've been talking a lot about Federacion Wrestling over the past several weeks. They've been doing big announcements. They've been working so hard to keep us interested. And this week, a bunch of the bad news started to hit that we were really hoping wasn't going to happen around, we always talk about exciting new independent promotions have bad track records, and here we go. The first thing I saw, and I don't know what order you, Pep put up on luchacentral.com a story about pretty much all of the Ingobernables people individually posting on social media that they were not going to be able to make the Federation show. They all basically said logistical difficulties or something to that effect. And then later we saw that Federation Wrestling in their social media that they are going to have to postpone the show. I believe, was that the phrasing they used, or did they say cancel and reschedule?
They said they were going to postpone, and that they were going to announce a date.
Postpone.
They were going to announce a date in the future, though the announcement did not include a future date.
Right. That's the part that was my big takeaway, but I didn't want to say the wrong phrasing. If they said postpone, that's a little different than we're canceling and we'll reschedule, which a lot have happened during COVID. Like, we're canceling for now. But, they're going to try and delay the date. They also use the term, logistical difficulties or something to that effect. So, as I was talking about with the team here off air, that sounds like this may be like a unified plan. Maybe they all realized they couldn't do the show. I'm speculating it might be related to the amount of ticket sales. They might be postponing to be allowed to have more people in the arena that they want to have. I'm not really sure, but because they're all talking about it using the same sort of language, I'm a little more optimistic that whenever they reschedule, we may still have our full main event, because without anybody from the Ingobernables crew, you have almost nobody in the main event, and you've lost a good number of people out of the Copa that was going to be one of their opener matches. So, maybe some good news will come if everybody can keep it together. I don't know. Did you guys have any observations or thoughts on this one?
Yeah, go ahead, Dusty.
Well, I still hadn't ordered my pay-per-view yet because I was hesitant to spend my money until I was sure that the show was going to happen. I guess that describes my level of belief in their ability to get the show off the ground. It just, everything about it felt a little amateur in an odd way. And despite they were offering real high caliber matches, but it felt like the anticipation and excitement just wasn't there the way it should have been.
Yeah, I mean, so I was willing to be a little more excited because of the high caliber of matches, but I don't remember if we talked about this on air or not, but to your point about the early days of ordering the pay-per-view, it was still going to an email address that was being used for adult movies. So,
wow.
That really, it adds to that.
Some inbox.
Right. That adds to that feeling of hurried amateurishness. They tried to put their best foot forward, they've got a decent social media presence, and they were announcing big matches. But yeah, they weren't able to generate excitement as much as they should have social media wise, and without television or anything else to do the work for them, it was really hard. They had that one AAA invasion angle at the pay-per-view, but no follow-up since then, really.
Yeah, I just echo Dusty's sentiments about, and we see this a lot too here in the U.S. is sometimes when a card is too good to be true, sometimes it is.
Oh yeah.
And I think the star power was all there, the promotion was all there, but the fact that they were really stacking the card and they just kept growing and growing and growing is a sign. And especially, and they haven't really been established for that long, is, how could they, you think of the finances, you think of the logistics, you think of the interest, you just think of a lot where, the shows that tend to start off with such a big bang don't tend to stick around for very long, if they even do a show. So I think that it just felt like it was too good to be true. And then as soon as, it was obvious that there was somewhat of a domino effect by having all of these stars bow out. That without a lot of people who they advertised, there wasn't going to be a way for them to keep up with what they had promised. But I don't know if it was, I would think that if it was maybe them canceling first or them having to reschedule first, that they would put the announcement out first before the luchadors started to put their announcements. It seems like the fact that they weren't able to come and make it really deeply impacted the show to the point where they weren't going to be able to run.
Yeah, I think that goes back to Dusty's misgivings about it feeling kind of amateurish. I think that they probably didn't communicate clearly enough to the talent that they wanted to make an announcement first.
Mm-hmm.
Or even necessarily think about it. They might not have even thought, oh, it would be better for us to make this announcement first. It's hard
Mm-hmm.
to say. I don't know what the total experience of the promoter is, so who knows. But definitely by letting the talent or having the talent, I don't know if they let them announce first, it really fuels the sort of indecision and cynicism of fans like us. I mean, I didn't order the pay-per-view either. My excuse wasn't nearly as forward thinking as Dusty's. It was mostly, oh, I'll get around to it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, I don't think this is going to happen, but I tend to have rose-tinted glasses when I see a dream card that is,
Mm-hmm.
which is legitimately what they had. I just really, and they had, so allegedly, at least Roosh was also financially invested in this. So, they had wrestler backing on it. They had all these talents announce themselves for being on it as well. It wasn't just a phantom card, which is, one of my biggest fears always, like when I see a card and then I don't hear anything from the wrestlers that are supposedly on the card. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, so the big takeaway again is that the show has been postponed. No wrestler has officially withdrawn from the show. They just said they weren't going to be able to attend at that date. So now that the show is being postponed, we still don't know who's going to be on, if the card's going to be changed or not. So we probably can look forward to many more weeks of major announcements from Federacion Wrestling, and we will be covering them here. But that's my road back to shows. I knew we were going to have a lot to say on this, so I kept it short and sweet. Also, we are a little bit ahead of our normal news cycle. Normally, as Miranda will tell you, I predict big things happening on Wednesdays, and we didn't have a lot of time to look down the barrel of that gun today. So that's our that's our road back to shows for the week is Federacion Wrestling making some not so great moves for the fans. Mexico City being green, so hopefully that means we will have lots of big announcements soon. So I'm going to just jump right in, go over to the indie roundup. I have one match. I did post footage of this in our Facebook group. Mas Lucha put up some highlights from it. The Andrade match that was going to be happening in LA with Andrade Viejito Suicida versus Hijo del Santo, Rey Leon, and Mysterioso did happen. It was a 2 out of 3 falls match, but the important fall, the third fall, Andrade directly got the pinfall over Hijo del Santo. So the post-match angles were around that. It sounds like Andrade was kind of being a little bit of the arrogant young buck sort of person, and that Santo's time is over, and it's time for performers like him to take the spotlight. And they're very definitely trying to tease towards a singles match with each other. I don't know who would pick that up. Maybe it'll be the same promotion. Maybe it'll be one of these. They're very much trying to get that by putting this in front of an American crowd. They're very much trying to get this in front of more eyes in America. But you can guarantee they'd fill out a stadium anywhere in Mexico with that announcement too. So that is the. That's the Lucha Central is the network, I believe is how we phrase that on our Facebook, for the Facebook group we have.
Lucha Central News.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, highlights are there. A couple of neat pictures went up. Jerry and Pep are always posting interesting things, but I did put Matt this there, and hopefully that means that somebody will put it on the YouTube channel at some point too. But that's my indie roundup. We had Andrade and Hijo del Santo. I mean, it was a 6-man match, but they very definitely were in the ring together, and Andrade got the best of them at this point, which was kind of interesting.
Interesting. Yes. And that is the Lucha Central Weekly News group on Facebook. You can request to join that if you want to be a part of it. As Brendan mentioned, we do post links not only from Lucha Central, but of course there's others that post other links in there too. But a lot of links that are collected throughout the web focused on Lucha Libre. You can find that at Lucha Central Weekly News Facebook group. And thank you, Brendan, for both the Road Back to Shows and the Indie Roundup. Of course, make sure you stay tuned on what's going to come out. I wholeheartedly agree with Brendan. One way or another, more news about Federacion Wrestling will be coming out in the next few weeks, whether that is an announcement of a new date or maybe some news that will be coming out regarding the circumstances of this date having to be postponed. One way or another. We all know how this works. More news is going to be coming out. But with that, let's kick it off to Denise Salcedo, who brings us this week's Lucha Central.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a reminder of where and when to catch all of the great network content this week. Get the full lineup and listen to all of our shows in the podcast network section of luchacentral.com. On Tuesdays, Mats, and Mayhem takes you inside the world of Lucha Underground as they take you weekly through the series with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of special guests from the groundbreaking series. Check out the premiere video stream every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on the Lucha Central YouTube channel and at luchacentral.com. Then listen to it on your favorite podcast platform every Wednesday. Tuesday nights live, it's Wrestle Boss, where Fabi Chulo talks MMA and pro wrestling with special guests and listener call-ins. Visit WrestleBossLive.com Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific to listen live or call in with questions or download the show on podcast platforms on Wednesdays. Wednesday nights live on Facebook, it's Spanish show La Mesa de los Márgaros, giving you both the news and the chisme from around the lucha world. Special guests and a whole lot of fun make it one of the most talked about shows in Mexico. Thursdays, it's Straight Out of the Bodega with Papo Esco and PWR promoter Gabriel Ramirez, as they have guests from throughout the wrestling world pull up to give an inside look into their careers. From indie standouts to television superstars, each week brings a new name and perspective. On Friday, it's your double dose of Lucha Central Weekly podcast, one in English y el otro en español. Lucha Central Weekly is where you'll find all the top stories of the week, both inside and out of the ring from Mexico and anywhere luchadores are in action across the globe. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms, either by their own series name or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network show pages to get all of the shows in one easy feed. And please consider giving a rating to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central Central. Have a great week.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Masked Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to lucha-masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at lucha-masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.
And thank you to Denise Salcedo, who brings us this week's Lucha Central Central, letting you know what's happening throughout the Lucha Central Podcast Network. Up next, Dusty has some AAA news to share.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of AAA news. TNT Sports Mexico launched on June the 11th, and the official launch largely focused on the presentation for Champions League 2021-2022 soccer. But a press release before the official launch stated that there would be an upcoming announcement of Mexico-based Lucha Libre programming as part of the channel's offerings. Space Channel is the home of AAA in Mexico, and it is also a TNT property. So Mexico Lucha Libre is most likely alluding to a AAA show, but it may be that the existing AAA programming for Space is now going to be shown in more places. It's a rather regional right now, and so it may be expanded, because from the initial announcements, it sounds like TNT Sports Mexico won't be an actual broadcast channel, but a branding package for the sports content airing on the TNT Turner family of channels in Mexico. So it'll really be interesting to see if this will improve the ease of finding AAA content in the U.S. once the dust is kind of settled on the lawsuit between AAA and Lucha Libre FMV. If it spreads the availability of Lucha, it's more likely that we'd be able to get more Lucha up here. The shows would be a little more consistently available, so that's all very exciting. And speaking of TNT, we have a full slate of AEW coming your way. We have first up AEW Monday Night Dark Elevation, Eddie Kingston, and Penta El Zero Miedo with Alex Abrahantes, he came out with them, versus Eric Cannon and Kevin Blackwood. And this was actually a rematch of sorts between Eric Cannon and Eddie Kingston. They had squared off a few times in Chikara back in the day, and Eric was like a name on the indie scene a few years ago. Not that long ago, maybe. It seems a little shorter than it was, but, you know, it's nice to see him show up on the big stage. And it was also nice, it was nice to see Penta and Eddie tagging together in this match. I forgot how much I enjoyed their dynamic together when they had Eddie Kingston's family. And, you know, when he kind of took the pack role there. So it's interesting to see him kind of taking the Phoenix role right now with Phoenix injured. But this match was awesome. I highly recommend you check it out. The finish was great. Kingston is tagged in, and Penta dazed Blackwoods with a fear factor. I mean, it looked amazing. And then Kingston followed up with a Saito suplex that the commentary called a half and half, and that cinched the win. It was a great match, and I hope it's a sign that we may see more of the Penta-Eddie Kingston alignment in the future. We've seen that the pairing that AEW kind of wants is Pac and Phoenix. You know, that seemed to be the tag team they were pushing before Phoenix's injury. So it would be interesting to kind of bring him into the dynamic and to have sort of an outside person for Penta to tag with at times. I just like the pairing.
It also gives potential for story, so maybe we can get some consistent story out of having it happen this way. But
yeah, it's true.
Carry on. Sorry, I just have to fire my shots.
I appreciate it. Next up, we had Tuesday Dark, and our highlight match was All Ego Ethan Page at a 13-2 record versus Danny Limelight with a 3-7 record. And it was nice to see Danny Limelight back on Dark. Like, it'd been a little while, and he has consistently shown himself to be one of the most versatile performers in AEW, and this week's match was no exception. I'm honestly not sure why Danny isn't all elite yet, as I think he would be one of the strongest signings to their roster. He can wrestle against anybody, different styles, always something innovative. And this match obviously was part of that. His opponent on this match again was All Ego Ethan Page, and he seemed to be the only guy in Daly's Place that wasn't a fan of Danny Limelight. And I mean, like, it's true. Like, everybody, it was just cool how much they enjoyed him. Danny hit a fantastic tightrope walk into a flipped neck breaker, but it wasn't enough, as Ethan Page was able to pick up the win with the Ego's Edge at the 4-minute and 20-second mark. Then we had, not Wednesday night, but Friday night Dynamite. It'll be Friday, clear up through the end of June. June 30th will be the first Wednesday show, but we'll get to that in a moment. But anyway, first up, we had Christian Cage versus Angelico. This was a pretty good opening match. I really enjoyed it, but my problem with it wasn't about Angelico or Jack Evans. It was just a tool towards furthering the feud between Christian and Matt Hardy. But Christian versus Matt Hardy in 2021 really does nothing for me. Like, I'm not even trying to be rude, but they were both the least interesting guys of their respective tag teams. And so, like, it kind of shows in the feud. You know what I mean? Like,
I follow you.
Yeah, I mean, Christian's look and his work is perfectly solid, and he hasn't looked bad at all. But at the same time, he hasn't really looked great. And to have somebody with such limitless charisma and limitless ability like Angelico lose to 47-year-old Christian, who could be putting over younger talent, it wasn't for me. And but I enjoyed the match, just the dynamic of it, the actuality of it wasn't for me. And then after the match, go ahead, sorry.
I had an interesting observation on watching this. They have this great story for them where Angelico and Jack Evans are the hitmen for Matt Hardy, but they're not giving them the credibility by letting them win against people on Dynamite. They need to be able to come out and do some real damage on Dynamite so that it feels like this is a legitimate threat to Christian Cage, because that will help Cage be a better babyface. But yeah, sorry, that was just my weird observation of it.
It goes back to kind of the bigger story about, Dark and even Elevation and how they tie into Dynamite, and sometimes they don't. Like when Dusty was going into Ethan Page's stats, like 13-2, I was like, how? Like how has he had that many matches? And if he's always on Dark or Elevation, okay, that makes sense. But then that doesn't translate into Dynamite. So I just feel like there's opportunities where they can do more continuity, like you also mentioned, with the pairing of Eddie Kingston and Penta, that, that would be really well showcased on Dynamite. But maybe because storyline they don't have of any way of explaining it other than Jon Moxley's out because he had a baby, you know, like they say, it's not important enough to put. So like they have 3 products literally that will more continuously be on 3 days in a row, back to back to back. So there's so many opportunities for continuity that it just seems like they really use Dark and Elevation as a way to bolster up people's numbers or rankings. But then when it comes to Dynamite, it doesn't even matter. It almost feels like it's 2 to 3 completely separate products, which if that's something that they're going to go for eventually, that's okay. But that doesn't seem like that's the master plan either. So start using it more for continuity and have things that start on Dark eventually matriculate into Dynamite. Sometimes they have things from Dynamite into Dark. You know, every so often you'll see Jon Moxley or Kenny Omega or one of those big, you know, fight wrestlers on these other shows. But more times than not, it's a way to give Ethan Page 13 matches because we'll never see him on Dynamite.
But they can even start with just real little things. They can just have one of the commentators say that he's 13-1, you know, coming off of a big win last night on AEW Dark, right? They could do that if they wanted to refer people to that product and remind them that things are happening on the other shows because they have to keep a tight 2-hour schedule, maybe, but they're not doing that either. So it does add to that separation. Yes. We've totally derailed you, Dusty.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. No, I agreed with all points, actually. Like, this is right up my alley. But we did have another match that we kind of mentioned, you know, the Penta and Eddie Kingston. We had Pac, Penta, and Eddie Kingston versus the Young Bucks and Cutler. Brandon Cutler. Don Callis joined commentary on this match. It was very fast-paced. I enjoyed that, but it was a bit predictable finish. I found the addition of Eddie Kingston interesting. This was before the Dark match even, so it was especially interesting Friday night. But it was obvious from the moment that it was announced that Cutler was in the match, that his job was to take the pin, because you know the Bucks aren't going to lay down for 3 seconds. That's not what they're there for. And I mean, I'm not complaining. I find the Bucks entertaining, and if this is the Bucks, you know, that you love, then, you know, if you love the heel shtick, this is what you got. But it was a great match. After the match, the Bucks attacked Penta and Kingston, and the Good Brothers came in to assist, but then Kazarian showed up to help even up the numbers, and they drove the heels to the back. It was a surprisingly good match for, you know, like Dynamite, but at the same time, it would have been nice, you know, to see, you know, maybe Penta get the pin or even Pac.
I wanted to ask about that because they called Kazarian the Elite Hunter.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've seen or heard that he's like acting on any sort of beef he has with them. Obviously, because they broke up the tag team, we can fill in the blank that he would have beef. But are you aware of it? Like, has it happened somewhere on maybe Dark or Elevation?
I did not see it on Dark or Elevation. I thought maybe Being the Elite or one of the the YouTube shows. I don't watch those very regularly, so
that's they probably did it on.
But I
he
noticed
is a regular on BTE.
Yeah, and then our main event, we had Cage and Hobbs versus Hangman Page and Dark Order's 10.
Yeah.
This was such a great match, like so good. Cage was just a shining star in the whole match. He hit a 619 that was so fluid and fast and effortless and just beautiful. You did, like, somebody his size should not be able to move that fast and easily on something with the 619. I mean, we see how Ray takes it now, you know, and he's kind of more ginger in his approach, but when Cage comes at you, it's like a hurricane swinging around. I mean, it looked frightening. Like, it was so good.
It looks like it really could do some damage. Yeah.
It was amazing. But the real story and the highlight of the match was towards the end of the match. Ricky Starks threw Cage the FTW title to use it in the match. Cage throws it away, and then takes a real stiff slap from Ricky Starks. And that pissed Cage off. So he jumped out of the ring. He chased Starkey Baby straight through the tunnel to the back. So then Hobbs decided to hit a spine buster. He got a 2 count on 10. A ripcord cutter, however, dropped Hobbs. And then the buckshot lariat from Hangman Page got his team the pin at the 10-minute and 18-second mark. There was a lot going on in this match, but the best part for me was that continued and evolving split of Team Taz being the biggest story. The match I personally want is Cage versus Starks. That's going to be amazing, but I think we're going to have to wait to get there with Ricky's injury. But Hobbs versus Cage will be good, and I'd be good with that too. The two big guys, the powerhouses. I mean, that's always exciting, but these guys are also so fast and fluid. These aren't your average 2 big men.
No.
Man.
Oh, no, they're both super. Like, Hobbs is basically what Cage was 5 years ago, and Cage hasn't slowed down very much since that time. So, yeah.
Assuming that's the way they go with the story, but yeah, I that's what I want. Like,
well, My prediction is that we're going to have Cage versus Starks whenever he's healthy for the FTW championship, because they're going to have to take the FTW belt off of Cage.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Yeah, and that's the match I really want out of the Team Taz. And there's been rumors we're going to see Hook wrestle, sometime in the next 4 weeks or so. And so it seems like that'll be brought into part of it too. And also, this was the first match in a long time that I felt like Hangman Adam Page felt like a big deal and an important deal. And I'm always good with that too. Big fan of his, even though it's not Lucha. But yeah, that was awesome. And then we had an announcement this last week that July, we're back starting June 30th, but all of July, Dynamite is back to Wednesday nights, and they have a special schedule for the first month of shows on the road. July 7th in Miami is the Road Rager. July 14th in Austin, Texas is Fyter Fest Night 1. July 21st in Dallas, Texas is Fyter Fest Night 2. And July 28th in Charlotte, North Carolina is Fight for the Fallen. And they also, the June 30th show will be the final Daily's Place show, and they're making a big deal out of an announcement coming this Friday, the 18th, June the 18th, for what the main event will be on the first Wednesday night Dynamite back. And most people are assuming that it's Andrade, that we're going to see Andrade's first match. And so I'm terribly excited for that.
That is the one thing you've skipped, was that we got a vignette of Andrade on this week's episode too. I mean, so we didn't get much. For those of you that are wanting to hear what's going on, it was probably a half minute. He didn't say much. They mostly just showed him dressed up real fancy.
Yeah, he was wearing a white pinstripe double-breasted suit, and he had his La Sombra pendant on his necklace. He looked like a gangster. It was amazing. Like, very old school, very classic look. Yeah, I mean, I go ahead.
In my opinion, they should have done these things in reverse. They should have given us this vignette last week, and then had him walk out, cut that promo this week. The crowd would have popped a lot more, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
But too late.
It's my understanding that they're back to no crowds, that it's mostly just wrestlers at ringside. And so I think that the reason they pulled out Andrade when they did was there was just a crowd there. Yeah. But the crowd seemed real baffled. Like, I don't know if it was just the booze from Vicky and the lack of music, but yeah.
Well, I mean, they could have still done the same thing, where if they did a vignette first, if they even waited a week, because ultimately, if we're not even going to see him wrestle until the end of July, what was the rush of bringing him in? You could have still done a vignette, and then when you did have a crowd, and because it could have still been like he couldn't have been announced, and now fans would have still been a little bit more familiar. But I kind of agree with that thought process and just maybe delaying it a little bit of time if, they had really no plans to have him in the ring until July.
Yeah. Well, and I just miss the old school vignette intros. Like,
yes.
I mean,
yeah.
They
even got it right with Eva Marie.
Yeah.
Yep.
How can they get it right with Eva Marie and AEW can't get it right with Andrade? Like,
no.
It's frustrating.
I feel dirty now.
But yeah, I think that's the only logical spot for that main event. Their last Daily's Place show would be Andrade. If I had to pick an opponent, I think Phoenix is supposed to be healed up right around then. So let's say Phoenix.
Yes.
Now you're just fantasy booking.
Well, we know they listen to the show, so
yeah.
TK, just take some notes from us.
That's free advice, TK.
That's free advice,
You're
TK.
good a businessman not to take the free advice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You've paid for worse.
Going in hard.
I'm looking at you, Cody.
Oh.
He named names.
Where's the lie? I'm searching. I didn't think we were gonna far and wide for the lie.
I didn't think we were gonna be naming names. I thought we were just gonna leave it so the smart people knew what we were talking about, and everybody else would just be like, "I'm glad I don't know."
Oh, Dusty don't play like that.
I go hard.
Well, thank you, Dusty, for both the AAA news and AEW review. Of course, you can check out the results for these AEW shows on luchacentral.com and let us know your thoughts on this week's AEW. What are your thoughts on the matches that we've talked about? AEW going back on the road and our hypothesis as far as when Andrade will be making his in-ring debut. But up next, we have NXT. This past Sunday, we had In Your House, numero dos. Not really the name, but it was just, my flair on it. But NXT In Your House happened this week, and I love the throwback vibe that they did more this year than they did during last year's show. So, really appreciate that. NXT just... It's just so hard. I mean, sometimes they don't, rarely do they miss the mark. I just feel like rarely do they miss the mark in a lot of things that they do. But let me go into In Your House with the results. We started off the show with the winner takes all match for the NXT Tag Team Championships and the North American Championships. Champions Bronson Reed and MSK face Legado del Fantasma. I was kind of surprised that this match was starting the show, just because I had pretty high expectations. And, again, I kind of booked myself into a corner where I truly thought Legado was going to win this. This would have been a great opportunity, for someone else to get the pinfall while, one of the other champions looked strong. But the match itself was really entertaining. The chemistry, surprisingly, between Bronson Reed and MSK was really good. They did some good trios work, for a team that hasn't been, on TV together very much, and on paper just together to fight Legado del Fantasma. There was some really good quick tags between the three, especially MSK, but Bronson Reed was very surprising. But eventually, throughout the match, Legado del Fantasma was able to kind of, again, leverage some momentum by, taking out Bronson Reed for a little bit. And again, MSK kind of just struggled with Legado del Fantasma kind of being everywhere. But, again, I think NXT just loved the sound of Bronson Reed hitting Santos Escobar, because outside of the ring towards the end of the match, you had Bronson Reed just ram Santos Escobar into the side of the barrier, completely taking it out. Last week, he rammed Santos into it with a pretty good ricochet, but this week he completely plowed him through. So, that was, that was the opening for MSK to take out, Joaquin Wilde and Raul Mendoza for the win. And this one, it was a great entertaining match. Again, I feel like actually Bronson Reed and MSK really, shined really bright. Of course, Legado de Fantasma did as well, but it makes me really wonder what's next for them. And we've been wondering that really now for quite some time, since Santos had lost the Cruiserweight Championship. It made sense for him to kind of point his direction to the North American Championship. And of course, Joaquin Wilde and Raul Mendoza is still on that track for the Tag Championships. But this is now the third, fourth championship opportunity that they've had that they've lost. Yeah. And it seems like the tag team championship scene is going in a different direction against, the Grizzled Young Vets and Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher possibly. So I feel like they're going to move away from them. Now the next feud that Legado really has to be in, really, they need to shine bright. There was some thoughts, and we talked about this off air, maybe they could go up against another faction like Hit Row. But they're really trying to build up Hit Row, and I can't imagine them having them lose to Hit Row if they're really doing their best to build them up as a new faction, as a threat. So it makes me wonder what else could be next for them if they're really no longer in the tag scene. Maybe Santos has an opportunity for the North American Championship again, because he technically wasn't the one that was gotten pinned, and so maybe he's going to shoot for more of a one-on-one opportunity. But it makes me really wonder what the next step could be for Legado.
So it's unfortunate that you started off by commenting on the fact that NXT rarely misses the mark, because I felt like that's what they did with this. You had a great opening match. You had three guys in Bronson Reed and MSK that could have come out looking great and being elevated even in a loss, whereas Legado del Fantasma, by losing, has only lost value. They're no longer credible in the tag team division. Santos did such an excellent job of being a cringy heel in this match that he's not really credible as a heavyweight threat. Which is fine, sort of, but it's not raising his value. Nobody's going to think he legitimately is going to beat Bronson Reed. So
yeah, well, and now, I mean, they've been kind of notorious for the tactics that they use, utilizing that, triple team in any opportunity, interfering in each other's matches. So that doesn't quite surprise me, though. Again, it just seems coming from a completely different direction, because Santos won the Cruiserweight Championship unification match.
Right.
And
this is, this is where I think it's a misstep, because they did a beautiful job of being really good heels and cheating to win. And the MSK and Bronson Reed did a really good job of gelling together as a team, doing high-flying, exciting moves, mostly forcing the match to become more, legal and pure whenever they took control of it. So had Legado del Fantasma managed to cheat and win, that would have been on brand for everything they did. It would have still elevated the other three guys, and it makes Santos a credible heel threat to any title, even though he would have had one. Whereas now I won't say nobody. It's not easy to take the threat seriously. Even if he gets a one-on-one match, you're gonna be expecting, him to just cheat the whole time and probably not win. And that's, so I feel like they had a really hot commodity in Legado del Fantasma, and they're already looking past that towards Strickland's faction to be the next big group. And I do feel they made a misstep here. You can't. It's hard with the talent they've got to have a bad match. So it's nothing on. I always want to. Anytime I'm being negative here, I always want to make sure the performers did an excellent job. There was not a bad match. It was very entertaining. I just didn't like the way that it turned. Basically,
So after that, we had the singles match between Mercedes Martinez and Xia Li. This one from the bell started out pretty aggressive. Both of them fell out of the ring because they were just kind of viciously mauling each other. And Xia Li had control for a good portion of the match until they went to the outside and Mercedes Martinez was able to avoid a pretty big kick, move out of the ring post or move away from the ring post where Xia Li kind of did a hard kick, and that helped kind of with her momentum going back into the ring. However, one of her associates, Xia Li's associates from Tian Sha, kept kind of interfering in the match, kept getting in the way, and that kind of helped lead to enough of a distraction for Xia Li to get the win with a beautiful kick. Afterwards, Mercedes Martinez, though, got a chair to kind of be the equalizer in the ring, and that led to a stare down with Mi Ying, who is the leader of Tian Sha, and very much of a mystical moment where she grabbed the throat of Mercedes Martinez and shoved her off into the barricade. So it looks like this match in particular, this program is going to keep on going, and we may see more of a role from Mi Ying, her take more of a bigger step in the ring or just a bigger presence within the program.
Yeah, that's actually, my view on that is most people, without you reminding them that Xia Li actually got the win, most people are just going to remember that moment after where Mi Ying did. So it really seems to be more about getting the Mercedes Martinez aligned against someone else in this group.
Yeah, very true. Up next, we had the NXT Women's Championship match, Raquel Gonzalez versus Ember Moon. This one, Ember, like she has in the past, really had to utilize her speed right away. She started with a drop kick, and she had to really keep up aggressively with speed in order to face and tackle Raquel's strength. And at one point, though, Raquel, what she's been doing great, and it's the effect that the Capitol Wrestling Center has with the barricade with, the plexiglass and the chain link around it. Some great sound effects when people get rammed into it. So between Bronson Reed throwing Santos or ramming Santos through the barricade and the constant, pretty much almost in every match, Raquel Gonzalez is throwing someone up against that barricade. It makes a great sound effect. But towards the end of the match, Dakota Kai had a big hand in helping Gonzalez out, and helping prevent a pin, from Ember Moon. But then Shotzi Blackheart came out to help equalize the match, running Dakota Kai out of the, ring area. And of course, kind of continuing that storyline between Dakota Kai and Shotzi Blackheart. But Ember Moon hit a tornado DDT on the platform for a near fall, but right afterwards, Raquel Gonzalez hit her one-handed power bomb, which she has named the Chingona Bomb, which made me laugh in only the best ways when I heard that. They have it on paper, but they don't say it, and I don't know if it's just because the announcers don't know how to say it, but when they have, the stats up by her name, they reference it as the Chingona Bomb. So, she did retain her title. And, it does seem like, and I'll talk a little bit later about, what's next, but, Raquel Gonzalez has gotten her revenge against Ember Moon, not only in defending her championship, but, the fact that Ember and Shotzi took away their NXT Women's title run, just on the same night that they were awarded those titles. And then finally, we had the NXT Fatal 5-Way Championship match. Karrion Kross defending his title against Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Johnny Gargano, and Pete Dunne. And this match, I mean, it was hard to not expect it to be as chaotic as it was, because literally for the past week, they have been fighting all over the Capitol Wrestling Center. They had that before the show. I mean, it was a brawl everywhere that they went. And so this too was very interesting because you had different styles all in the same ring. The highlights for me was, when Johnny Gargano and Pete Dunne, threw Karrion Kross into the front door of the stage set. So that was how that set was being used last year. If anyone remembers, Io Shirai jumped off the top of the set, onto Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley. So the fact that set had some damage to it wasn't very surprising, but I, liked the way that they did it. But the ending to me was the most interesting because you had, Kyle O'Reilly put Adam Cole, I think it was in a ankle lock submission, maybe not exactly that, but some kind of ankle lock submission. And then Karrion Kross comes out of nowhere to then put Kyle O'Reilly in the cross jacket. And then as you see Kyle O'Reilly losing, his strength, letting go of his submission, and Karrion putting on the cross jacket tighter, to win. So that was, the match itself was all over the place, but really, really interesting. Some great spots between Karrion Kross and Pete Dunne. Of course, Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole and that whole program. Johnny Gargano. I thought, there would be some moments where I'm like, man, how crazy would it be if Johnny Gargano won? Knowing that wouldn't happen. But I think it was a really entertaining and fantastic match. But Karrion Kross, still your NXT champion. And that leads us to this week in NXT. At the end of In Your House, William Regal, who was just seemingly exhausted from the events of this past week, mentioned that he was looking for a change. And this week on NXT, that change came in the form of Samoa Joe, who he originally had pretty much asked him to take over his job, but ended up settling up on being a special type of enforcer. And so Samoa Joe is back on the scene very easily, seemingly that he could, possibly be Karrion Kross's next opponent. So that, shut up and take my money, with Karrion Kross and Samoa Joe. But just some interesting points on the women's side for this week on NXT. Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai faced Kacy Catanzaro and Kaden Carter. It's great to see Kacy and Kaden back in the ring. I believe Kacy was dealing with some injuries for a while, and again, for anyone who is a fan of flippy stuff, Kacy just continues to grow and utilize her strength in gymnastics and in anything aerial. She really honed in. She seemed like she's able, I think there was some issues with like over rotations in the past and a little bit of, I don't want to say sloppy because that's not the right word. But just like preciseness in her movement that this week seemed to be a lot tighter, and she was a lot more precise and a lot more in control of her rotations. And that made it just so good, especially with her and Kaden Carter, with again, a lot of quick tags back and forth, quick movements. It was like spider monkeys in the ring, and Raquel Gonzalez just had no way of controlling it.
Anytime Kacy and Raquel are in the ring together, it's really amazing. The two of them play off of each other really well. So I highly recommend this match.
Yes, I thought it was a fun match. Dakota Kai, though, got the pin, hitting the GTK, on, I believe it was Catanzaro for the win. and they're really on the road to the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. That seems, you never know. I think that's kind of the interesting thing, is that 1 week they can kind of be focused on the Tag Championships, the next not. But, there's going to be a line for the NXT Women's Championship, because Io Shirai came out later in the show. She wanted to announce who she wanted to face next, but Candice LeRae came out and interrupted her, pretty much tying in this larger storyline that Io Shirai is friends with Poppy. Candice LeRae is partners with Indy Hartwell. Poppy did something that hurt Indy, which was hug Dexter Lumis. And that's kind of the deeper thing. And Candice said, your friend hurt my friend, so now I'm going to get at you. So both Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell attacked Io Shirai. They were setting up a big elbow drop from the announce table, but she was saved by Zoe Stark, who was able to be the equalizer. So we may see the team of Io Shirai and Zoe Stark versus Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. So the women's tag division is pretty ramped up again. But of course, Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai are always going to be kind of lurking there, ready to go when an opportunity strikes. So a great week, kind of more in Lucha Libre content for the women's division. But we will see much, much more. They also announced the Great American Bash will be coming back in July. So already they announced Kyle O'Reilly versus Adam Cole. And we know we're going to see Karrion Kross in a match. We will for sure see Raquel Gonzalez as well. So we will see. But a pretty packed week with NXT.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Of course, the results for our NXT are available on luchacentral.com. So if you missed out on anything, make sure you check out those results. But up next, Ring of Honor. We have a big return this week in Dragon Lee.
Well, and LFI.
Yes.
This is basically LFI's return as well. So we got. Okay, so I'm gonna backstep a little bit. We this week on television we had a couple of matches that were scheduled. As I teased last week, it was Kenny King and Dragon Lee were going to be in the ring against Tracy Williams and this is why I have notes. Tracy Williams and Rhett Titus, and this was going to be a Pure Rules tag match for the tag team championship. That was our main event on the show. We did have another qualifier for survival of the fittest as the starter. Not at all lucha adjacent. They started there, and then we had some promo for this, and Dragon Lee is definitely kind of putting it really in the spirit of LFI. He's dressing fancier all the time. His ring attire is getting fancier. Really good stuff. But unfortunately, this match suffered from being on TV instead of the pay-per-view it was scheduled to be for. It was a good match. It was a great match for TV, but it wasn't the over-the-top spectacular that you would get on a pay-per-view. They were clearly editing and cutting away at times, so yeah, you kind of missed a bunch of it. I don't know if you guys watched this one or not yet, but I did enjoy it. I loved it. And once again, this is my story this week. The Foundation did come out on top on this one, and I really wanted to see them, to see the rematch. I mean, maybe it was always going to be the way they were going to win at the pay-per-view, even if, Dragon Lee had been there, but, you know, I kind of wanted to see a little bit of a reset to where they were at before Dragon Lee got hurt, and then go from there. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's still a very great episode of ROH. I'm not going to hate it. I'm certainly not mad, and I'm not mad about next week's match that they showed the graphic for, which is Dragon Lee challenging for the other title that was defended. So maybe he wins this one. Hopefully that's what happens, is we'll realign things. But that was our ROH for this week. Definitely we're gonna have more news next week. With LFI back in action. That was I did gloss over. I almost forgot that was our big ending. Is the both factions wound up brawling while and basically ate sandwiches. I mean, they were there to just enjoy the show.
They were just, hey, let the chaos ensue. Why step in when
right?
all of their competition could beat each other up?
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that part that because the first time they came, they turned it into a three-way brawl for reasons, but this makes more sense. Just like let them beat each other up, and we will just enjoy the show from up here. And I mean, it's great. So hopefully we get more of this. Now that LFI is back, we should see this three-way feud they've been building really intensify, and maybe, just maybe, we will see that building towards a pay-per-view match with kind of a 4 versus 4 versus 4. That'd be my ideal thing. But you gotta get that would mean that you wouldn't get Rush defending the heavyweight title in that pay-per-view, so it may not happen that way.
Well, now we're going to take you through a little tour of history with this week in Lucha Libre history.
Yeah, that's right. Now it's time for This Week in Lucha Libre History. Be sure to check in at luchacentral.com every single day for this day in Lucha Libre by Pep Carrera. He's got information on their birth dates, anniversaries, matches of the day, amazing videos, and even more, and it's all about Lucha Libre, and that's at luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. This week we chose June the 17th, 2000, when the Pardismo Lucha Libre show was held. This was the first and only time that CMLL and AAA have worked together on a major show or a televised show. This was at the request of Televisa, and if you don't know, Televisa at least was, I mean, there still are, but they were a very big deal in Mexico. They're still a big deal, but they were a very big deal. They are a TV network that is national, and not only that, at that time they owned most of the local affiliates in Mexico, and a lot of the radio stations as well. So when Televisa wanted it, they had to agree. And even though they can't get along, and one company or the other has always refused to work any interpromotional angles, Televisa was able to step in and make it happen one time as a special Father's Day show. And what was really interesting to me about the show was that due to the backstage politics, this wasn't AAA versus CMLL. To make the show happen, they agreed that they would put all the Rudos together and all the Technicos together and Rudo versus Technico matches. And so that was kind of interesting too. The match that really stood out to me was the best 2 out of 3 falls 8-man tag team match. Brazo de Plata, Rayo de Jalisco Jr., La Parca, and Octagon defeated Abismo Negro, Cybernetico, Piros Jr., and Shocker. And this is a fun match. Back in the VHS tape trading days, I had a video of this show, and I always loved this match. Like, where you get to see this kind of lineup and mixture. And I also wanted to mention this match because people listening to the podcast, you might not, like, so especially newer fans, might not know Shocker, but he was awesome. Like, and he's kind of like an elder statesman of Lucha now, but he could really go and was really exciting and impressive as a younger wrestler. And you know, and if you're like me and you still have your Mil Percente Guapo shirt, this is the Shocker you know and love. So that's like best of both worlds.
Yeah.
What did you think, Brendan?
I loved it. I mostly was focusing on the like you said, the mix and match that they had. So I was like, oh, it was interesting to see that. I really liked that Televisa was, for lack of a better term, the adult in the room that forced the kids to get along so that we got this show. We were joking about it, but I'm gonna say it. This really is the true forbidden door. Like, ne'er shall the two meet, really. Like, this is, in all of wrestling, there is no greater promotional animosity I can think of than these two promotions. Like, one side or the other is always angry at the other one. AAA's formation was because they were upset with the way CMLL was handling things, and then, I mean, so it's been there. I was, but it was one of the things I've always talked about that makes Lucha so different, energy-wise and visually-wise to American sports was, like you said, this was a Father's Day show. And first off, anybody who's heard us speculating about what the ring would look like in a bullfighting arena, this match was in a bullfighting arena, and that visual alone was very cool. But they were scanning over the crowd, and you're seeing, like, bored-looking dads sitting next to their kids, and, you know, it looked, you know, and the very over-the-top grandma who was really into this was also there. It looked like going to a Sunday afternoon baseball game.
Yeah,
like
it did. Yeah. It had that feel.
Which is,
yeah.
And then maybe it was Televisa's influence or something, but you had more of a big sporting event feel by having having performers come out and sing to start the show, and having the band play the anthems. I mean, just all in all, it felt more like a traditional sporting event, and then these crazy masked men came out and did this very visual spectacle thing. It's a nice little time capsule because you're getting some of the best wrestlers and some of the best periods of time. Like Dusty mentioned a few. You also had Hector Garza, and I had made a couple notes on other really interesting, like, young presenters. You had both Tirantes on the show, I believe. Yeah. I believe Tirantes and Tirantes Juniors were on. Yeah. I mean, fun stuff. Go ahead, Miranda.
No. I was gonna say, I remember too, like the especially in the beginning, the welcome that Tirantes got was pretty big. But even, having both referees, CMLL and a AAA referee there. I mean, you've seen matches with two referees, but that was kind of the interesting thing about having a dual promotion event. I think what fascinated me the most was the setup of having the Rudos versus Technicals, and how that being very interpromotional. So it wasn't necessarily CMLL versus AAA. And that's almost like, thinking about it from a perspective of, any bigger promotion. But say if it was WWE and AEW, that's like having Bobby Lashley and Kenny Omega on the same team, And so that's fascinating. And it completely, you understand, like, why they would need to do that politically, to say, well, it's not going to be one promotion over the other, because how are you ever going to book that? How are you ever going to book who wins and loses? But in the case of this show, it was, good guys versus bad guys. And in this case, all of the Technicals, the good guys won. And it was because it was also more of a feel-good event, and it was more of a showcase because you had singers and dancers, and it was, more of an event. So I can see how it got put together, but on paper you see, AAA versus CMLL, or at least at some point that's how it may have been sold. But at the end of the day, it was a joint effort, which was still a big deal for these two companies to work together, to have their wrestlers work together, in, something very open like this. But you're also, go ahead.
I just remember remembered a thing when you were talking about it again, about the booking on it. There was a documentary on AWA that I believe it's still up on Netflix, where they talked about indie promoters trying to come together and create a super show. And the biggest setback on that was all of the promoters came in there with the mentality of my guy has to win. And so historically, we're not just speculating. This was a thing that happened. You can go see the history of Supercard, AWA Supercard, and know that show did not do the numbers it could have with the talent that was on there because nobody could agree who was going to win a match. Sorry, I completely derailed you, Miranda, but I just...
No. That was just really my thoughts of this. It was just more of what Dusty started off with as far as the structure of this was the most fascinating part for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because in some ways that, too, is really, really rare to have, an interpromotional show where you have wrestlers of different promotions teamed together. In some ways, I wonder... on paper it may be easier because you're not going over, who wins, who loses as far as my guy wins or my guy, I don't want my guy to lose. But, it's then, even, I don't know if it was like spots in the match that were more contested or who was being paired with who, or I don't know, it's just the interesting thoughts of things that started to run through my head. But I mean, something that happened once and never again. I had heard and in my research that Televisa tried again afterwards to convince AAA and CMLL to do this again. And
come on, guys, just one more.
From the research, it was that CMLL was the hesitant party. Again, I'm not here to speculate, but that was just what the research led to. It was that CMLL, and it seems like based off what we talked about before, with CMLL being a bit more protective of their talent, that if that is the case, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it's not out of character, put it that way. Yeah, fun stuff. There's a number of really good matches in there. I think that the format that they chose is more interesting to me as a fan too, because now I'm getting like to your Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, or whoever he's partnered with kind of idea. Like, not only do I want to see those two guys that I've never seen working together, but I also want to see them go in against two other guys that I've never seen working together. That really intrigues me and creates a whole layer of dynamics that I really want to see out of a show.
Well, that is this week in Lucha Libre history. Don't forget to check out this day in Lucha Libre history at luchacentral.com. But yet, there's so much more on luchacentral.com. So, Brandon, can you let our listeners know what else they can find on luchacentral.com?
All right. So if you guys are listening to us and you haven't visited luchacentral.com yet, it really is time to do it. LuchaCentral.com is your online home for Lucha Libre, where you can find all of the top news in English and in Spanish. Find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events would be happening in your area. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. It's a place to have your voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives and all the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. But here it is. Here's the kicker. It's free. So, best price, always free.
Best.
Free.
LuchaCentral.com is your place for all things Lucha Libre.
Dusty, up next, you got some WWE news, specifically SmackDown, leading us into Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, first up on SmackDown, like in our relevant content at least, we had Rey Mysterio backstage, and he actually had a great promo about how Roman had targeted his family and hurt his son, and that he wasn't going to stand for that, and at the end of the evening, he was going to step into the ring and call Roman out. And so later, Rey indeed steps into the ring. He calls Roman out. Roman showed up with Paul Heyman, and Rey told him he wants Roman, and he wants it at Hell in a Cell. And then he whipped a kendo stick out of nowhere and wailed on Roman a little. Roman was able to grab the kendo stick and turn the tables before Dominic showed up with the second kendo stick to interrupt a spear attempt from Roman to Rey, and he subsequently took one of the gnarliest power bombs in recent history. It was an amazing visual. Roman just picked him up and yeeted him right over the ropes. Like, it was awesome. And
it was
then
awesome flashback there.
And so then Roman's just casually strolling out. Rey runs down to check on Dominic, and Roman just turns around and punts Rey in the head. And that ended the episode. Then on Talking Smack, Paul Heyman was on. He said at the end of the episode he would announce their decision, and they agreed to accept Rey's challenge for a Hell in the Cell match between Roman Reigns and Rey Mysterio. And this is actually Rey Mysterio's first appearance in a Hell in a Cell match, but this is Roman's 5th appearance, giving Roman the clear advantage in the match, so I don't think the Roman Reigns show will be over anytime soon. I'm not even sure that this feud has very long legs, because allegedly the penciled-in main event for SummerSlam is John Cena versus Roman Reigns, so we will see where this goes, but at least Rey Mysterio in a main event and in his first Hell in a Cell match this Sunday, so you don't want to miss that.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it's a great kind of feather in Roman Reigns' cap to go up against, a legend that is Rey Mysterio. It is, and I understand this criticism or just this critique, because I feel the same way about it, as far as Hell in a Cell is usually reserved for, pretty longer feuds, or the end of a feud, or a feud that has escalated to the point where the only way to settle it is in Hell in a Cell. And because this one is a little bit more rushed, with, this story not being too long, it's hard to kind of buy into why does it need to be in Hell in a Cell. Granted, I think the story behind it with the attack on Dominic is a good one. I mean, anytime anyone messes with his kid, very understandable. But I feel like if they would have just made this a little bit longer or more intense, then the build up to Hell in a Cell would have been a little bit more believable. But, I still think it's going to be a very interesting match, a great one too, because, as much as Rey has the size disadvantage, he definitely has the experience advantage. And Rey has faced much larger competitors throughout, a good portion of his career.
Yeah.
But
He's a giant killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also do not see Roman losing whatsoever.
Nope. I don't either. SmackDown, for better or for worse, is just the Roman Reigns show right now. That's the direction they're heading in. And I don't see them derailing that for a Rey Mysterio win, especially if what their plan for SummerSlam is the showdown between Roman and John Cena. That's a big money match, and that's, arguably more important than Rey versus Roman. So, I mean, I get it, but yeah, it feels weird to use a Hell in a Cell match for this. Feels like they just shoehorned one in.
That's the problem with having all of your pay-per-views crammed in together, is that and then having weeks of repetitive booking instead of forwarding storylines, is suddenly you're like, oh crap, we've got a pay-per-view next week, we gotta get somebody on it. But to the point, it's Rey Mysterio in the main event on a pay-per-view, so, I mean, even though I know he's probably going to die, and be thrown off of, I'm still gonna watch it.
Yeah, I'm excited for this match, and it's Rey Mysterio's first Hell in a Cell match, and that's pretty interesting this far into his career, and as long as he's been around the WWE thing, and so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of positives to look forward to in this as well.
Oh yeah.
Well, the results for both Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown are available on luchacentral.com, as well as Hell in a Cell. I am sure the results will be up after the pay-per-view this Sunday, and we're going to talk about it on next week's show. So make sure you stay tuned. We're definitely going to be giving our feedback on that match at Hell in a Cell. But a detour, maybe not a detour, because it makes it feel like that's not the right road, but this is the right road because it is on the rundown that we use. NWA. And this may sound like a detour because we don't normally talk about the NWA, but they have continued to grow their lucha presence, and that has continued on this week's show. This week on NWA Power, Aaron Stevens was facing PJ Hawks, and their match ended in a no contest when La Rebellion, which is Bestia 666 and Mecha Wolf, interfered. They just came out and beat up everybody. They even beat up Luke Hawx, which is PJ's dad, and they have no sympathy for the son. So in one case with WWE, Roman Reigns is beating up someone's son, Dominic Mysterio. In NWA, Bestia and Mega Wolf beat up PJ Hawk, who is Luke Hawk's son. And then they had a quick promo, which was somewhat bilingual, mainly in English, but they did speak in Spanish, which again, for NWA, shocks me. But Bestia and Mega Wolf pretty much confirmed that they are on a hunt for the tag titles. They're a hunt for gold. They are a hunt to establish themselves in the NWA. And so they're going to take out anyone who stands in their way. And I thought this was a great way of showing some of that dominance and that strength and their presence as more of a wild card factor within not only the tag division, but the entire NWA. I
want to throw some Twitter shade at them. While we've been recording the show, they tweeted about this. And they referred to Mecha Wolf and Bestia as coming from AAA wrestling. Dusty's Dusty's reaction explained that perfect. The whole point of La Rebellion is they were a breakaway group from AAA, so that NWA. If you're listening to the show, because we know all the big people listen. Yeah. We will help you get your copyright next time. Sorry, carry on.
It doesn't surprise me when you have, a team, you have Joe Galley as your primary commentator, a fantastic job. And it was, I don't know if it was mentioned on commentary, actually, now that I think about it. But because it was just a short clip that I saw. But anyways, it wouldn't surprise me that maybe there was some miscommunication, on that. So it happens though. It happens to the best of us. So
it's fine. It happens to everybody. I'm just, we want to make sure everybody keeps their facts straight as much as, we always tell you, the listeners, to correct us or tell us what we got wrong. We're doing the same thing. So we are practicing what we want you to do. So when I screw up on Indie Roundup, please let me know about it too. This isn't just us being jerks. Yeah. Although it's more fun on this side of it.
We also had a triple threat match. It's a 3-way qualifier to determine the new NWA, or it's a qualifier match that will determine the new NWA national champion. So there will be a series of matches to determine who's going to qualify for the ultimate match. We had Fred Rosser versus JTG versus El Rudo, known by many people as Sam Adonis. And so Sam was kind of the odd man out at first, approaching JTG, approaching Fred Rosser. Neither one of them wanted anything to do with El Rudo and ended up attacking them together. But El Rudo had a great double neck breaker after he was walking the ropes. And then he also had he took advantage of a near fall, taking Rosser out of the ring. He then slapped JTG, who then put him in a crucifix. into a neck breaker for the pin. So it is very much a surprise, not so much a surprise, but we are seeing Sam Adonis, who was on When Our Shadows Fall earlier in the month, making regular appearances for the NWA. So between Bestia, Make a Wolf, El Rudo, and of course the constant presence of Thunder Rosa, NWA is really stepping up their Lucha Libre presence. I did also read there are some spoilers out there for the NWA because they do tape these shows in advance. So if you do not want to be spoiled, I'm going to give you just a few seconds. And I won't spoil it too much. I won't go into details, but there is reports as far as a match that has already been recorded as a Lucha Rules match. I won't reveal who's in that match at this point, some of it because I forgot, but transparency, but that's something that will be coming down the pipeline fairly soon. It was just recently recorded, so the fact that the NWA is looking to have a lucha style match or a Lucha Rules match on Power is a very big step, one that I did not expect to see the NWA move into.
So I'm gonna help us pay our bills a little bit here and point out that Sam Adonis is a bona fide luchador who even has a segment in the Eat Like a Luchador book. See what I did there?
That's true.
Yep. Yes.
So go buy your copy of Eat Like a Luchador and then watch Sam Adonis in the NWA, or if you don't want to watch Sam Adonis in the NWA, he's all over the indies. There'll be other places to catch him.
That is true. He is all over the independent scene throughout the U.S. We did see him in AAA just recently. We will likely see him again in AAA at some point, and of course seems to be maybe a regular staple now in the NWA. So we will see, but. Again, maybe an unexpected source of Lucha Libre content, the NWA. Make sure you check it out. They do have some clips available on their YouTube channel, but right now they are currently through Fight TV. You do have to purchase that. You can purchase, I believe, a group of shows. I think it's like a 4-pack for Power. Yeah, but again, if you are looking for some maybe new, innovative Lucha Libre content or a promotion you weren't very familiar with or didn't think had Lucha Libre content, NWA may be your cup of tea. But with that, up next we have Impact Wrestling, and this past Saturday we had Against All Odds, and a few matches that Lucha Libre fans may have been interested in or want to know about. One of them being the 5-way match to determine the number 1 contender for the Impact X Division Championship. Not necessarily luchadors in here, but I always relate the X Division to much more of a high-flying, quick style division, very much in alignment with Lucha Libre. And this match itself, too, proved that. You had Petey Williams versus Ace Austin versus Trey Miguel versus Chris Bay versus Rohit Raju. And this one, I like how in the beginning of the match they hit Ace Austin and Trey Miguel. They found themselves brawling outside the ring, and they've had very much of a long history of story between the two, in and out for years now. So that's great that they can use this match to kind of address that. But Petey Williams was looking great in this match, looking pretty much like better than ever. He did it was kind of fitting because Chris Bay has been in, I think, looking more and more like Shawn Michaels and his gear.
Oh, yeah.
So very much Shawn Michaels inspired gear. And, he was put in a sharpshooter by Petey Williams. So, I mean, I don't know if that's just one of those little things that as wrestling fans, some stories always come full circle, even when it has nothing to do with the people who were originally in the story. But it was also interesting because in that you had Trey Miguel, who locked Ace Austin in a leg lock, Petey Williams, who had Bay in the sharpshooter, and then Rohit Raju, the only thing he could do, and this was simultaneous. So at this point, you could have had 2 tap outs. Rohit Raju had to break it up, really, in order for him to save his chance at winning the match. But towards the end, Madman Fulton came out and just destroyed and laid out everyone, which was this almost like, you know, in the Power Rangers when all the Power Zoids came together. Yep. It was kind of like that because he hit them with like 2 choke slams and a power bomb simultaneously. So it was like a Power Zoid of power bombs and choke slams. Is my best way. Yeah. Is my best way. No,
that's a good explanation. It. Yeah.
That was just my genius just coming out. But, you know, in a shocking, maybe not so shocking turn of events too, the referee deemed it a no contest. So nobody won, because Madman came out and laid out everyone. Now, in theory, it makes sense because, yeah, when someone interferes and takes out everyone, there's nothing that you can do. Maybe if there was more of a sneaky attack or interference, that could have been excused. But literally, he took out everybody all at once. So I don't know then what this is going to allude to. The one thing is that these matches are great, but that's very constant in the X division. Multi-man championship matches, multi-man number 1 contenders matches, and, you know, after a while you got to break it up. The Iron Man match between TJP and Josh Alexander was fantastic, but one of the more rare occasions as of late of a one-on-one match. So I don't know how they're going to determine this. It could be a scramble, it could be a 5-way, it could, you know, I mean, literally any type of style of match that they've done to do this, they've done. But, you know, who knows if, you know, they're going to throw in something interesting. You know, I know this is not for a championship match, but maybe a contendership, but, you know, I would love to see an Ultimate X match come back as, you know, maybe a briefcase or something hanging from the X, as more of a definitive way, because at this point you're trying to find a definitive way to determine a new number 1 contender. But again, if you just are a fan of fast-paced, quick, flippy matches, this is a great one to watch. We also had Decay challenging for the Impact World Tag Team Champions versus Violent by Design, specifically Diener and Rhino. Crazy Steve started the match, and he got in a hot tag to Torres, who was in the ring with Rhino. And that itself was a really interesting match. Well, actually, so technically the tag happened with Diener first, but I got ahead of myself and jumped into Rhino because that to me was the money. To see Taurus and Rhino in the ring together. But Black Taurus too, I mean, had a beautiful standing drop kick from the top rope. In coming in. I mean, Black Taurus is one where his versatility still is amazing. He could still be so agile, but he's a big brute of a guy. So I've just really enjoyed him in this match. The match itself was pretty quick, but Violent by Design got the win and retained, the Impact Tag Team Championships. You know, it is what it is. I feel like this may not be the last time you see him. It may be, because the tag division within Impact 2 is kind of all over the place. You know, Finn Juice is out. The Good Brothers seem to be out. Maybe this is a longer story with Decay. Who knows? But it also seems like Violent by Design is, you know, they're going to hold on to those tag titles for quite some time. But again, the fact that Black Taurus is in some really great matches, maybe not in-depth storyline, but that's not what Impact is known for at this time. So, you know, but you get some great matches.
Absolutely.
Then we had the main event for the Impact World Championship, Moose versus Kenny Omega. It was announced earlier in the week that this match would be happening at Daly's Place, so that's AEW territory. And a very interesting commentary lineup. You had Don Callis, Tony Schiavone, and, oh my gosh, why is Scott D'Amore on commentary. So, you know, the interesting thing with this match, and I'm glad they addressed it, overall was a solid match. I'm not a fan of the ending, which I'll get to in a minute, but something that wasn't quite addressed in the build up to this, but you saw in the match was, of course, Kenny's one-winged angel. That's his go-to. But with Moose having the clear size advantage, it was going to be nearly impossible for him to put that in. And that's also kind of a rarity with Kenny Omega, is the fact that he doesn't typically face people as competitors as big as Moose. And so that was something he tried to land the one-winged angel kind of earlier in the match, and just struggled, because you can't do that to Moose. You just do not have the strength to do that. But they did brawl on the outside. There was a point where Moose was kind of taunting Kenny Omega with kind of that gun point, and he ended up spending too much time on that because he missed his target and was launched into the barricade, and they fought outside. During that time, Kenny was able to kind of take advantage of the barricades and kind of the stair barricades, kind of looping Moose's arm through that to kind of weaken him. But we had a beautiful, once they got back into the ring, a beautiful Spanish fly by Moose. Spanish flies are just my favorite, so word up to anyone who does them, as well as Moose does. But there was a point where Moose was going in for his spear, and Kenny Omega pulled the ref in, knocking him out. And then when you know it, with the ref down, the Young Bucks come out, and they just do their little super kick party things, knocking out Moose. Then Kenny was able to put in the BTE trigger, or they were able to do the BTE trigger that then helped Kenny Omega put Moose into the one-winged angel for the pin. So Kenny Omega is still your Impact World Champion. He defeated Moose. But then afterwards, we did have Sami Callihan come out and surprise Kenny Omega. He is the next challenger for Kenny Omega at Slammiversary. And for some reason, like, Sami Callihan just looked like he was supposed to be at AEW. The look, his attitude very much aligns with AEW. So, the bad thing about this, or kind of the bummer, is that this wasn't in front of an audience. It was just in front of wrestlers, which, again, we kind of knew that was going to happen. But, you know, this was the one time we did see an AEW match, or an Impact match in AEW territory. So, but I don't think that's going to be, this may be it. They're not going to do it like New Japan has been doing it. They're not going to be, you know, showering them with praise. It kind of feels like Impact is still kind of that dirty secret that they acknowledge every so often.
Yeah, only when they have to.
Only when they have to. Only when they have to. But so we are recording this show on a Wednesday this week, not on Thursday, because usually we would have your results for Impact this week on television. So you're going to have to wait till next week to know what happened this week on Impact Television, and also what happens next week. So we'll address the past and the future in the future. Yeah, that sounds about right. Sounds about right. And finally, our last story for this week is MLW. And as I mentioned, we are recording this a day early, so we do not have information for you regarding the draft. That gets announced every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So make sure you check out MLW's YouTube page. They are continuously promoting the July 10th show in Philadelphia. Cesar Duran this week, they did have some graphics up reminding fans that he was going to be there in attendance. So the Azteca Underground story is going to continue to be pretty relevant. And over the past few weeks, we have consistently had at least one lucha signing, one lucha adjacent signing as part of the draft, whether it's a re-sign or a new signee. So we'll definitely bring that news to you next week. And we just anticipate that, you know, they are growing that lucha talent, whether that specifically be for Azteca Underground or for MLW or for both. That too is something that, remains to be seen, but very, very fascinating aspect about MLW and the draft. And again, you know, this is coming up in less than a month away. So the July 10th show and everything surrounding it continues to fascinate me, continues to be something I'm looking forward to. And I know they're going to continue to have news pop up over the next few weeks. But we also want to talk to you about MLW Underground, because this is a pretty lucha-centric, lucha-adjacent episode. And I'm going to bring Brendan in because he's a little bit more knowledgeable on that. But we have 3 matches this week on MLW, plus a vignette as well. But you had the Stampede Bulldogs versus Puma and Bobby Quantz.
Quantz is how they were saying
yes,
it, yeah.
Homicide versus Low Key, and in a junior heavyweight championship match, Sanjay Dutt versus Jack Evans. That's a summary, but Brendan, go into a little bit of detail about these, because there's definitely more connections just beyond the matches I listed.
Well, I mean, the matches you listed are enough, but so Puma and Bobby Quantz were being billed as being a Lucha Libre team. They are listed. I looked them up on Lucha Wiki. Bobby Quantz is a West Coast wrestler who primarily wrestled in Mexico for a good period of time before this, and was in XPW. So that is a promotion that a lot of Lucha Libre fans will be familiar with. There are a number of Pumas. I could not find one that had that exact match. He looked like a West Coast wrestler to me as well. He's not one that I recognized, but they were billing him as coming to them out of CMLL. So that tag team match was very West Coast Lucha. I believe Miranda would call that California Lucha Libre style, where you had lots of high-flying, smaller guys going at it. Very fun match. Then the Jack Evans match, Jack Evans was being represented by Teddy Hart, who we all know really did big things in Mexico, and was, despite being a Hart, is more of a luchador than a Canadian Hart. Yeah. But mileage will vary on this. But and then Jack Evans, of course, he hadn't gone down and made his big name in AAA yet. He was very young in this, but we all know him today from being, we just talked about him in last week in our segment on This Week in Lucha Libre History, and we talk about either him or Angelico almost every week on AEW now. He's kind of a staple. This match was designed more to feature Sanjay Dutt, but again, if you want to see kind of the young, before he hurt himself a lot, Jack Evans is a fun one to watch. And you have Homicide in the main event. Now, Homicide is more Lucha adjacent than Lucha, but he's been tag team partners with multiple people that were featured on Lucha Underground. He's worked in Mexico. He's all over the place on that, and generally, my feelings won't be hurt if you just stop watching after the Jack Evans match. I had just enough time to squeeze this in before we got on the show, because I knew just when to fast forward. All the commercials for that card game that came out in the 90s were gone. I scrubbed through those real quick, but this is a fantastic loaded lucha match, which is kind of also a nice segment of history that, as we keep talking about, that it's neat to see Underground doing. So highly recommend checking this episode out.
Yeah, that is available on MLW's YouTube page, and we're going to continue to get episodes of Underground as we build up to new episodes of Fusion. And Underground has those hidden gems. We have old school, Vampiro, of course, Sanjay Dutt, LA Park, and much, much more on MLW Underground. So if you want to do a blast from the past, check it out. Many more episodes are available on MLW's YouTube page. But again, this week is a little bit more lucha-centric if you're looking for that. And with that, we've reached the end of this week's episode of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast. Thank you so much for listening this week. Don't forget to check out luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre. You can follow Lucha Central on social media at Lucha Central on Facebook and Instagram, and at luchacentralcom on Twitter. You got to check out the YouTube page. There are a ton of content, including interviews, matches, and much, much more available for you to view, all for free. And while you're at it, why don't you go ahead and follow us on social media? Dusty, can you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Yeah, I am on Instagram at Dusty Murphy, and I am on Facebook at facebook.com/Dusty Murphy.
And Brendan, where can our listeners find you?
I am 321 T-shirt guy. That's the numbers 321, and then T-shirt guy is all spelled out. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram, and as you heard already, I'm on Twitter.
And again, if you are a Lucha Libre promotion, wrestling fan, or luchador, and you want to be featured on a future edition of the Indie Roundup, make sure you reach out to Brendan and send your information in, send your video, send your content, because we are always looking for independent promotions to promote on the show.
Absolutely.
And me, Miranda Morales, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at the #Miranda. Hashtag spelled out, the #Miranda. Go ahead and give us a follow. Let us know your thoughts on the show. Give us just anything you'd like to share with us. Go ahead and reach out to us on social media. You may be listening to the show on your favorite podcast streaming platform like Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and more. So make sure you subscribe, rate, and review, and let us know how we're doing. Subscribe so you get notifications every time a new episode of the Lucha Central Weekly podcast drops. You can give us a 5-star rating, and you can give us a review. Let us know your thoughts. We're happy to incorporate, your thoughts on different ideas, on topics, on things that you agree with, disagree with, recommendations for segments, all of that you can let us know. For Dusty Murphy and Brendan Barr, I'm Miranda Morales. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will be back with you next week.